In my talk on Good Friday, I talked about how, as a child, I was afraid of the dark. You could say, I suppose, I was a softie. In fact, I'm still a real softie. If you were going to tease me, you could say I'm a crybaby. And I suppose I always have been in a way. When I watch a film and there's a really moving moment in the film and the camera lingers and there's some great act of self-sacrifice or some great moment of rescue or hope that arises out of despair, I begin to blub and I just think, wow, that touches me so very deeply. I recently saw a film called The Green Book, and it's about a black man and brilliant musician traveling in the deep south of America and facing up to all the racism and all the oppression of that place. And he's got a white guy as his driver, and there's a moment in the film where the white guy absolutely stands up for him, and it's just so powerful. Because the white guy is risking everything for justice and truth and for what really matters. And it really touched my heart, and guess what? It made me cry. When I was a child, I read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And I've often spoken about the fact that I feel I first really met Jesus in Narnia. If you haven't read the Narnia stories, I really encourage you to go away and do exactly that, and at least The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Parents, why not read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe to your children over this Easter? If you haven't got a copy, try and find it, maybe download a copy. It's a beautiful story, and in it the great hero of the story is Aslan the lion, and Aslan dies. And when I read that as a child and I read about Aslan dying, I just was so upset. I cried, tears streamed down my face, and I said to my mum, this is a stupid book. This book doesn't make any sense. If Aslan is dead, then the whole story makes no sense. And The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, of course, is C.S. Lewis's way of telling us the story of Jesus. Jesus, who died for us who don't deserve it, just as Aslan dies for Edmund, who doesn't deserve it. And my mum, being a very wise person, said to me, why don't you read on a little bit more and find out what happens? And I did find out, and of course, Aslan, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you read it for yourself if you don't know the story and find out what happens. On Friday, we read the story of how Jesus was crucified, and we talked about the pain of that event and the darkness that covered over the earth. And I showed you a picture of a child terrified under the sheets because of the dark. And I said then that it was actually, when I looked online for pictures of that, I could only find pictures of girls who were scared when I searched for scared of the dark. And yet I think that's really grossly unfair. And it's really unfair when you read the story of the crucifixion in the Bible, because all the men, all the followers of Jesus who were men, had all run off. They had all escaped, fled for their lives. But it was the women who were there at the cross weeping for him. And it was the women who went on Easter Sunday morning to the tomb. It was the women who went to visit Jesus and to embalm his body, to prepare it for his burial, for his lying there. And it was therefore the women who discovered that the tomb was empty. They arrive at the cross. And just as on Good Friday there's been an earthquake at the moment that Jesus dies, so now on Easter Sunday there's an earthquake as an angel comes down and opens up the tomb. And they find that the angel says to them, Jesus isn't dead, he is alive, just as he said he would be. And he, in fact, meets the women himself alive again in the flesh. You know, this story of the earthquake reminded me on Friday of Amos chapter 8, but it's also reminiscent of a passage in Isaiah chapter 25. It's another judgment passage where God talks about judging his people for their unfaithfulness. Judgment day is going to come and there's going to be an earthquake. But it says in chapter 24, it says there's going to be an earthquake. In chapter 25 of Isaiah, it says the Lord will prepare a great feast on the mountain for all peoples. Death will be swallowed up forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all their faces. And of course, that's a bit like the story of resurrection that we find in Revelation chapter 21, isn't it? In Revelation 21 verse 4, we read that God will wipe every tear from their eyes and that death shall be no more, for the old is gone and the new has come. There are lots of tears in the world today. There are lots of reasons why people weep, not because they're softies, but because their pain is real. There are people who are suffering for the old reasons, the same old reasons as always, because other people have hurt them or caused them pain. They've been caught up in a war or in famine. People weep because they've been made unemployed and lost their jobs, or because they're lonely, or because somebody they love has died. And of course, at this point in time, with the coronavirus raging across the world, the pandemic, there are many, many people weeping, many, many tears. And so this Easter, more than ever, we need to grasp hold of this promise of God, that one day he will wipe every tear from every eye, that one day death will be no more. Death, where is your sting? Grave, where is your victory? Because Jesus has risen from the dead. The Easter story proves the promises of God are true, they will be fulfilled, and we have hope. Happy Easter, everyone.